Hi, second grade. It's Miss LeBlanc, and I'm so excited to continue our close reading and responding with our text, What is Pollination by Bobby Coleman. Last time, we read about how different flowers have shapes, colors, smells, and special markings that attract pollinators to them. Today, we're going to read about why pollinators are important. Remember, this is an information text, so we can use things like text features to help us as we read it. Remember, text features are things like headings, pictures, labels, table of contents, glossary, captions, and all those things in addition to the words that help us better understand. So, when I take a big pause, you fill in the missing word and we're going to read about why we need pollinators. Get ready. Did you know that more than 1/3 of the food you eat depends on pollinators? Pollinators make plants healthier so they can make a lot of. There are thousands of kinds of pollinators. Most vegetables, fruits, and nuts come from that were pollinated by insects, birds, bats, and other small. Let's pause here and think about this fraction, 1/3. Say that fraction. So we've been learning about fractions in math. So let's pretend that this circle represents all of the food that you eat. If the circle is divided into thirds or 3 equal parts, about this much of your food would come from things that depend on pollinators. So think about that when we start asking the question of why pollinators are so important. Look at how much of our food comes from them. Let's read the next heading together. Get ready. All these foods. The foods shown on this page, and many, come from plants that were pollinated by and other animals. So look at the pictures on this page and the labels. Blueberries, all kinds of nuts, raspberries, many kinds of vegetables. These all show us the different types of foods that come from plants pollinated by pollinators. So, great readers and writers always respond clearly to questions to show their deep understanding of what they've read. Let's review our CFS before diving into 2 questions about today's reading. Criteria number 1, restate question using keywords. Criteria number 2, start sentences with capitals. Criteria number 3, end sentences with periods. Criteria number 4, use vocabulary from the text. Criteria number 5, reread your answers. Do they make sense? So let's be sure we're using all of this criteria today as we answer questions about what we read. Let's look at question 1. Why are pollinators important to people? So let's think about the key words here and what this question is really asking. What do you think are the key words in this question? Yes, pollinators and important. This question wants to know what makes pollinators so important. Remember, when you see a question start with the word why, that tells you that you're going to answer with because. All right, so let's go back into the text. What did we read about today that tells us why pollinators are so important? Yes, pollinators are important because they help make food. So that's what we're going to want to say to answer this question. So how should I begin my sentence? Capital P, you got it. So I would say pollinators are important. This is where I've restated the keywords from my question. Now I'm going to use my magic word because I'm telling why. Pollinators are important because they help plants make food. Notice I'm using vocabulary from the text like plants and food, and then I'm going to end my response with a period. Now, if you wanted to take your response to the next level, you could add a few more sentences about why making food is important to people. You could say, food helps people survive, people need food to live. That would take your answer to an even better place. All right, let's use our criteria for success one more time to answer another question. So our next question is, what are some foods that come from pollinated plants? So what are the key words in this question? What is it really asking? Yes, some foods that come from pollinated plants. So we're going to want to use our text features here, like all of these different pictures and labels, to talk about some of the different foods that come from pollinated plants. So you could pick out any of these examples to share in your answer. So let's think about how we're gonna, so you, first of all, you decide what 3 foods do you want to say. Okay, great. Keep your choices in your mind. So now we're gonna start our answer by restating our question. So we could say some foods, and how am I gonna start? Capital S, good. Some foods that come from pollinated plants are. And this is where you would list 3 foods based on the pictures that you saw that come from pollinators. So I know that I saw blueberries, gonna go back to the text to help me spell raspberries. And apples. And then notice I'm gonna end my sentence with a period. Now again, you could add even more details and say other foods that come from pollinated plants are many kinds of vegetables, different kinds of nuts, and cherries. Again, adding details from the text to make your answer even better. All right, friends, thank you so much for joining me today. I can't wait to see you again next time, where we're going to talk more about a really special kind of pollinator.